Hi, I'm Pauline Wallace from Hertford and Stortford. I'd like to know if you think that the role of deputy party is a real function, the party leader is a real function, and if so, what it is.
And that's Stella to answer first.
Hi, Pauline. Hi, Pauline. Good, great question. Yes, absolutely. If you want to look at that, just look at what John Prescott achieved for our party, going out there, making sure that we had a great organisation on the ground, making sure that we were taking our fight, not just the Tories, but also to the Liberal Democrats. Now, I want to make sure that we're able to do that again. I want to make sure that we are fighting fit, but I also don't want to wait until 2020 to make sure that we do that. I believe that there are ways that we are working that we can get everyone out there speaking up for Labour, campaigning in their local communities, showing the difference that we can make. And actually this region has some great examples of that. I was just talking to John from Harlow just now. There are ways that we can work. Your deputy leader needs to support that. That's what I would love to do.
Thank you very much. And Tom.
Hiya, Pauline. I've got a terrible sense of deja vu being in this room. Because the last time I was here was 20 years ago, organising a thing called the Red Rose Roadshow. Does anyone remember that? And I had to, those days I had to organise the Young Labour Disco for John Prescott, and I think it was in this room. So, and that's the role I think it is. I've been trying to define the role of deputy leader. I think it's the campaigns and elections job. Our new leader has got to create a vision for the party and the country that reconnects 5 million voters. And I think the deputy needs to help them realise that. I think the leader should be on the bridge. I want to be in the engine room. I've got some ideas about how we can reform the party to get a battle-ready election plan for 2020. It starts by understanding why we lost. And yesterday I launched a commission to look at Labour's lost voters. But I think we need a digital revolution in the party. I'd like to bring back Arnie Graff so that we can do some deep community organising in the early part of this election. And I think we need to make sure that we put local councillors and our active party members at the heart of what we do, because I know that in defeat you build out of local government.
Thank you. And Ben.
Pauline, is this a proper job? Yes, otherwise I wouldn't be going for it. But of course it has to be defined ultimately by the leader, him or herself. And I think the deputy leader needs to be a trusted leader to our leader, trusted both to be an ambassador out in the party but outside the party to all those people that we lost and who we need to engage to win back their support. They also need to be a trusted communicator in the media and in Parliament, and trusted to be loyal to our leader. I've always been loyal to all of our leaders, while at the same time being prepared to deliver uncomfortable messages to the leader when we think the leader has got something wrong. And that's the role I would do on behalf of you, the members, if I were elected. But first and foremost, we have to have a deputy leader who can help us win the next election. And with my record of winning a former safe Tory seat in the South, and turning it into a safe Labour seat over the last 18 years, I think I have something particular to offer in that deputy leader role.
Thank you very much. Caroline Flynn.
Well, Pauline, I think it's true to say it wasn't for want of a better ground campaign that we lost this election. I believe the deputy leader has to be at the heart of our policy, communications and campaigning strategy. And I'm proud to say, with 36 years in this party, I've never asked a member to do something I haven't done myself. But it's more than that. It is about someone who deputises for the leader in the House of Commons. It is about someone who's prepared to go on the media, on Question Time, the Today programme, on the difficult days to defend our party. But fundamentally, it is about someone who understands that unless we reach out to those voters who didn't vote for this time, we won't win an election. We should be asking ourselves why we lost this election, but we should also be asking ourselves why the Tories won. And we need to ask our family, our friends, our work colleagues who we love and like, who didn't vote Labour, why they didn't. And I think I'm the person to reach out to those people and have that conversation.
Thank you very much. And Angela Regal.
Thank you very much, Pauline. Firstly, the deputy leader has their own mandate, which they can use to tell truth to the leader, whoever that may be, and tell them when they think that perhaps they're going in the wrong direction. Our next leader is going to have to pioneer out in the country, not only for Conservative voters and those who voted Tory last time, but for those who didn't vote at all last time, and the deputy leader's got to allow them to do that, but keep the party close. I think the deputy leader has to be a campaigner in the country, a change agent within the party itself, and also has to deputise for the leader in Parliament. As someone who won a safe Tory seat and has kept it ever since up in Wallasey, I believe I can do and perform that task. I tell the truth to power, and I care about the party. 36 years in it, I know what it likes, I know what it won't tolerate, but I also know how it needs to change.
Thank you very much. And next question, Teresa Callahan from Stevenage. Are you here? You are.
I'd just like to know how the candidates think we can engage with the young, particularly those that think there's no point in voting, no point in politics.
That's to Tom first.
Well, look, I'm not sure if having young Labour discos at the forum is going to cut it anymore. And also, I'm not the person that should be deciding how we strategise with young people, even though I did move the resolution at the 1992 conference to create young Labour. But I'm now self-defining as middle-aged, and I know there's a revolution going on, and I genuinely worry about the next generation of young people entering the labour market. You know, my kids are the first generation outside London that have a realistic expectation that they'll never own their own home. In London, kids already have that expectation. They find it harder to find secure work. They find it harder to get jobs that pay. They enter the labour market with debt if they choose to go to university. We need to genuinely capture that problem and make it find a labour solution for it. And it starts with our young members. They can find creative solutions to the problems that young people are facing, but we need to engage them in the party, and I see that as a very key role for the Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Ben.
Teresa, I think one of the most popular things I said at the PLP hustings 2 weeks ago now was that we needed to have more fun in the Labour Party. More parties, fewer meetings. But seriously, I do think we need to change our culture as a party to be more attractive to young people. I have a membership of over 700 in Exeter. We had the best group of young people working on my campaign that we've ever had, even better than 1997, the best group of students, the best group of school children and college students. It's about going into the schools and colleges, engaging people. Yes, having the right policies for young people as well, but engaging them, treating them seriously in terms of respecting them and respecting their views and listening to them. We need to keep up the fight for votes at 16, which we're doing as the European Reform Bill goes through Parliament. That's absolutely the right place to be. If you look at how the referendum in Scotland, where the voting age was lowered, really engaged young people in that referendum, I think we can do the same in Britain in this deputy leadership and leadership campaign, and it's an opportunity for us to do so. Let's grasp it.
Thank you, Caroline.
Well, I once won a disco dancing competition, so I don't know, just don't talk the talk and walk the walk as well. But look, I think we should stop patronising young people and treating them all like they're all the same. I have 3 children in their 20s, and so I have my own little focus group, if you like. There are some young people, for example, who aren't actually getting the sort of support they need in education to do some of the jobs that are still dominated by the middle classes. And that's something we really need to address. I think social mobility is stalled in this country. But we've got other young people who have decided, you know what, I don't want to work for someone, I want to work for myself. They've got startups, they're ahead on the internet, and they want to hear from us about what our offer is to them too. In terms of the party, I actually don't believe we've got really an effective place for young people to come together and talk about the things they care about. I don't think our party structure is providing that at the moment. I think it's still old-fashioned. So on this front, I think this is my rule of thumb. Don't treat all young people the same. Wherever they come from, I think basically they want the same as some of us who are older. They want to know where they're going, how they get there, and how we're going to support them. And that's something we should recognise isn't just a one-size-fits-all.
Thank you. Angela.
Well, I don't think that young people think that politics is for them. They don't see how it changes anything, and we don't have structures that relate to them. I don't think our structures relate to any age group, actually. I was thinking about these 50,000 people that have joined the Labour Party since we lost the election, and all we've got to offer them, unless we change our culture, is more GC meetings. Now, I mean, I feel that I've done my quota of GC meetings, and even I dread them. So we've got to make our party more open. We've got to talk politics again. Capture the idealism of young people. Make them tell us how we should be doing things, not tell them how we do things in the Labour Party. There's fantastic idealism. There's great views about how we should change our society, but somehow that has become unplugged from the Labour Party. We've got to plug it back in.
Thank you very much. Stella.
Well, Theresa, as a former youth worker, it's what I did before I got into Parliament. One of my young charges downloaded my picture from the internet, sent it over to me, having airbrushed it and said, use this in your leaflets, it will be better. Only a 15-year-old boy thinks that's helping a candidate. But also, as a former youth worker, I know you have to give responsibility to get responsibility. I was lucky enough to be part of this region growing up, and the first place in Colchester that I got support to be involved in the Labour movement was when they encouraged me to stand for local council just at the age of 21. It wasn't just about saying, Stella, you could do this. It was about the support, the mentoring, and the networks of other young people and councillors they introduced me to. We have to see the capacity in our young people and drill into that and make sure that we're making sure the Labour movement can develop from that. That isn't just about the meetings. Of course, the meetings have to change. It's also about the mentoring and the networks that we build together. And frankly, it is about the fun. It is about that connection, that flame as to why anybody would get involved. There are millions of young people who share our values but not our membership card. We have to have the honesty and the courage to change that and be the vehicle again for the kind of changes they all want to see in their country.
Thank you very much. In my fun-filled way, I'll just keep you to time there. The next question is very much drawn the attention of the selectors by writing "not a teacher" on the top. Colette Austin, are you with us? Colette Austin. There you are. Mike is just behind you.
I actually asked 2 questions, so I'm not too sure which
Oh,
one.
this one's about... Cheeky. Right, this one's about party funding reform and big money in politics.
Okay. The Conservatives' Trades Union Bill will unilaterally alter the way trade unions fund the Labour Party and bring to an end the convention that cross-party consensus is required for party funding reform. With this newfound freedom from the convention, what will you do to get big money out of politics once and for all?
And that question first to Ben, please.
Well, I think we need to have an honest conversation about how we fund political parties in this country. We're the only country in Western Europe that has so little. We have a little bit, but very little public funding for political parties. I think we should continue to talk about that. I don't think it would be very popular, but it doesn't mean to say we shouldn't talk about it. But look, we need to mend, not end our relationship with the trade unions. I thought the Collins reforms were very sensible. We should stick to those. We shouldn't allow the Tories to make this about our relationship with the trade unions. We should defend our relationship with the trade unions. As somebody who's been a member of a trade union longer than I've been a member of the Labour Party, but is probably not associated as a trade union MP, I think I'd be very well placed to do that. And the other thing which I'm really worried about is the figure from this election that showed that we had a lead of 3% among people who work in the public sector. We had a deficit to the Tories of 17% among people who work in the private sector. We've got to work more effectively with our trade union colleagues to grow membership in the new economy, in the private sector, all of those people who are not working in traditional sectors, the public sector or traditional industries. That's how we make the case for trade unions, not making it about a couple of trade union general secretaries, but about the benefits of trade union membership for all.
Thank you very much. Caroline.
Well, I'm very proud that when I worked for the GMB as its political officer many years ago, I was involved in one of the first political fund ballots. And I think we should, in dealing with the Tories, make it very clear we have one of the most transparent systems in the world when it comes to how unions can decide how they use their political funds and their members take part. So we shouldn't be cowed by this. We should be proud and we should defend it. And at the same time, we should be seeking the same transparency for some of the donations that come in to the Tories' coffers as well. Now, we could obviously benefit from more state funding, but the truth is that's not going to happen anytime soon. So we do need to think about how we defend where we get our money from, argue for more transparency, but also build our base of support. As Ben said, look, union membership, 6 out of 7 people who work in the private sector aren't a member of a trade union. I think it's roughly about only half of people who work in the public sector are members of trade unions. So we have to think about how do we reach out to all those working people who could be part of our party and part of our support for fighting elections. But I would just end on this. If someone is successful in life and they want to support Labour, their amount of money they give to us is as much as a £30 I got from my 95-year-old oldest member the other week. I welcome it, as long as their values are in the right place.
Thank you. Angela.
Well, we know that the Tories are using the first part of this Parliament to try to make it impossible for us ever to be elected again by opting into trade union fund ballots, which could decimate our funding if we don't reach out like we did when political fund ballots were first introduced. Also by individual voter registration and by trying to change the boundaries, which could deprive us of 30 seats. So one of the first things we have to do is register those 7 million people that are missing from the register. On trade union funding, it is the cleanest in the whole country, and it makes my blood boil that the Tories are pursuing this tactic whilst leaving the £55 million they got from hedge funds completely untouched and unregulated. And we have to call them out for their sheer hypocrisy in this, because we know that the mistrust of politics comes from the idea that politicians are bought and sold by the hedge funds, and we've got to make the Tories pay for it.
Thank you, Angela. And Stella, please.
One of the things I really think we have to do is change the record about what role the trade unions play in this country. Trade unions gave us weekends. They campaigned for the working week. I'm really proud to have worked with trade unions on the campaign against legal loan sharking. Both Unite and Community helped me organise with local people to make the difference for credit unions. I'm also very mindful that Adrian Beecroft, who was one of the central funders from Wonga, was also giving money to the Conservative Party. So I'm not going to take any lessons from this government about the role of trade unions or about the role of party funding. I do think there is something for us as well about how we link our funding to our campaigning. One of the things I'm very mindful of is all of you will be organising fundraisers in your local community to help Labour. I think there's more we can do at a national level in the way in which we use our funds to support that. Why don't we have Kickstarters for local parties? Why don't we, when you use a Just Giving site for your charitable giving, have a way of working at a local level? Why don't we join up the work we're doing at a grassroots level with our trade unions, with our fundraising as well, to make every single piece of money go as far as we can? There are many ways that we can change people's sense about the difference that money makes to our politics, but let's be proud of our trade unions and proud of our campaigning too.
Thank you. And Tom, please.
You know, I think the best outcome for political parties is that they could collect a large number of small donations rather than a small number of large donations, because it's a civically good thing to do. I'm trying to do that with the deputy leadership thing, by the way. I've got a crowdfunding site. I've had 500 small donations that's raised about £20,000, and you can all join in that if you go to tom-watson.com. But let's not forget, the only reason we're having this debate about funding now is the last Labour government put in new laws to make it transparent for people to declare when they give donations to political parties. And what the government are trying to do now is deny trade unions their political voice. It's fundamentally anti-democratic. As the other candidates have said, the way that trade unions fund politics is the most transparent and democratic of any system in Western Europe. And what we have to say to the government is, if you're going to apply those rules to trade unions, you should be applying it to hedge funds and big business too.
Thank you very much. And the next question, are you here? Peter Mitchell from Hertford and Stortford. Yes, you are. Your question.
Proportional representation, would you put that forward as part of the your role as deputy leader?
Thank you very much. Caroline first.
No. We had a referendum on moving to a more proportional representation system in the last Parliament, and it didn't win. And I'll tell you why I also don't think that's a priority. Because it's not going to happen in the next 5 years. What we need to do is win in 2020 on the dice that's thrown us now. And I firmly believe if we take a different approach, an approach that actually reaches out in the way we won elections in the past under the first past the post system, which is about a broad-based coalition across classes, across communities, across the UK, one that speaks to those working class and middle class people in the centre ground who want to hear from us what we're going to do from then we can win. I think that's what's an important priority for me as leader, deputy leader, is how we're actually going to win in 2020. Having said that, I think there are ways in which we can make our democracy much more accessible, much more open, but I don't think PR is going to be a priority for me as deputy leader.
Thank you very much. Angela.
Well, we use the alternative vote in our internal leadership elections. Indeed, this election is being run on the alternative vote, and when the referendum happened, I voted for it. But I recognise and accept that the country didn't. I think that it's far more important to make politics accessible and make voting easier. So I would certainly make our register a lot better, but I recognise that the Tories don't want that to happen. They're quite happy for 7 million people to be left off the register. So we have to campaign to find those missing people and get them back on the register before December. I also think that turnouts in elections, if you look, we have many different systems of election in this country, for local elections, for the devolved assemblies, and none of it helps turnout. There's something much more fundamentally wrong about how we don't engage with our electorates. It's about party membership reaching out, it's about changing the culture, it's about trying to take our politics into every community. And so with that, I think that we can make a difference rather than blame the electoral system.
Please, thank you. And Stella.
Peter, I've long been a campaigner for electoral reform, not because I think it makes a single person vote. The evidence isn't there for it. I just think we're Democrats as well as socialists. My personal preference is AV+. But actually, one of the things I also recognise is there's a much more fundamental disconnection in British society about politics. People haven't trusted politicians for generations. Now they think we don't make a difference, and that is much more toxic, because then whatever the political voting system we have, they don't feel it's worth their while to participate. And as parties that have on our membership chart that we achieve more together than we do alone, for people to not think it makes a difference to collaborate with other people is toxic for progressive politics. So we have to not wait until people join our party to be out there talking to people who share our values but not our membership card about the difference that we want to make at both a local, regional and national level. I don't want to wait until 2020 to have that debate. I want to start now.
Thank you very much. And Tom.
Peter, when I was a young trade union official, I set up a group called the Labour Campaign for First Past the Post. And I've been on a bit of a journey, though, because I actually voted yes for AV in the referendum. And I did so because I was worried about politics becoming too narrow. This debate we have about the politics of the centre ground, I think has stifled a proper democratic expression in this country. But the truth is we're not going to have PR in the next 5 years. You've got a Prime Minister and a government that are implacably opposed to it. So the response to that, I think, has to be to broaden the Big Tent. And the great success of Tony Blair and Gordon Brown in the 94 to 97 years was they made the Labour Party a welcoming place for Jeremy Corbyn and Peter Mandelson. And we won an election when we were united with differing views, but with equal respect for those views. And I think that has to be the response to our current position.
Thank you, Ben.
Peter, I've always supported a fairer voting system. I'm not going to resile from that position just because I'm running for the deputy leadership, although, of course, I will support whatever is our official party policy. I will continue to argue for it, however, because if you look at the map of the UK after the last election, Scotland is a virtual one-party state, although the SNP got less than half the votes. The southwest, where I'm from, I'm a tiny red dot in a sea of blue, although the Conservatives got fewer than half the votes. You could say the same about vast swathes of the east of England here. So it is about fairness. I don't see those countries of Northern Europe and Scandinavia that have fairer proportional systems are necessarily worse governed than us. I think in many ways they're better governed. You don't see extreme parties getting into government. Yes, they have a role, but you argue with them, you deflate their support. That's fair, that's democratic. And I agree that we can't have another referendum. AV is not proportional, by the way, so let's scotch that myth. But given we lost that referendum, I don't see it happening very soon nationally. However, we should argue it for a democratically elected Senate to replace the House of Lords on a regional basis. That should be proportional. And we should also allow these new super local authorities to do it from the bottom up if that's what they want.
Thank you very much. And is Anne Joynes from Watford still with us?
Well, she's gone, but she's
had to go. I've got her question here, so I'll read it on her behalf. Please. Thank you very much. Anne Joynes from Watford, who is a party member, wanted to know, how will you help CLPs to campaign more effectively? And that question goes to Angela first.
Well, I think, firstly, we have to empower the party much lower down than we do at the moment. It's too top-heavy and it's too command-down at the moment, and everybody's meant to do what they're told and have the line, and we're not empowered enough. So we have to have resources that are actually much more helpful for parties at below regional and higher than CLP level, I think. The templates that we had in the election were too, they just didn't work very well. They weren't flexible enough, and yet our parties were paying for them and they couldn't really choose what they were doing. We have to listen much more to what our parties want. We have to ensure that people at, say, district level have the capacity to write their own leaflets much faster, to respond much faster to what's going on the ground, rather than have these great big top-down things going on. So I just think we need to educate and enable our party members to be much more flexible lower down without waiting to hear what the National Executive Committee or indeed the leader tells them they've got to be campaigning on.
Thank you. Stella.
I think if Anne was here, I'd want to ask her opinion, because the truth is this starts with our people. It starts with our people being our best assets and us working out how we can skill and equip them to be the best voice for Labour in their local community. And that is going to be different in different parts of the country. So whilst I know what we've done in Walthamstow to build a mass movement of people out there speaking up for Labour, I know it's going to be different around the country. I've been going around the country running skills development and capacity building workshops to help us be a party of 250,000 leaders in every single community. And I think we have to do a lot more of that, tailoring it to our local communities, tailoring it to their strengths, to the issues that they want to work on. That's why I'm also interested in what we can do to support that from the centre, how we can build a structure of staff who can facilitate that skills, that personal development role. You know, too often people are frightened to go to the meetings because they know they'll come out with a roll, they'll come out with a bag of leaflets, and nobody will have said thank you to them. All of that has to change, because our people are the first people you meet, and they are the people with the flame that makes you want to be part of the fire that is social justice.
Thank you. Tom.
Firstly, let me say that here in Stevenage, we had one of the best candidates at the general election I've met in Sharon Taylor. I don't know whether Sharon's still here. And she had the best organised party. She had the best print room I'd seen in the 109 visits to constituencies, and the members did the work. But it's not the case in all parts of the country. And I think the party headquarters can help those members that need extra support. I'd like to see a more federal Labour Party with representation on the NEC from Scotland, Wales and the English regions. I think it will just mean that there's a closer leadership to party members. I definitely think our leaders need to be closer to members. I'd like to bring back Arnie Graff and scale what we did in the organising model, community organising, certainly in the first 2 years of this Parliament before we segue into the build-up to the next general election. Do you know this party doesn't have an education officer? Yeah, I think a political party that doesn't stimulate political debate and train members in campaign skills is a party that doesn't have a future, and I'd like to change that. And I think we need a digital revolution. We've made great progress in digital.
Time, please.
We've made great progress in digital, but I don't want party emails just to be asking you for fundraising. I want, which we're very good at, by the way.
Ben.
Let's be clear, we didn't lose the election because of our ground campaign. It wasn't because of the hard work and our activism. It was because we had the wrong political strategy and we had a massive deficit on trust on the economy and on leadership. We need to give our candidates much more autonomy and power over their own brand. Where we buck the trend in my own seat, in Hove, our only gain from the Conservatives in the 3 southern regions, we had very localised brands around that place and around the candidate. We also need to get much better at a party in sharing best practice. I'm not one of those people who thinks this is either all about community campaigning or all about voter ID. Every one of us is a community campaigner. All our good councillors and good MPs and candidates should be, if they're not already, community campaigners. We have to support them to do more than that. But voter ID, don't tell me that doesn't matter. If I hadn't had a 75% contact rate and talked to 38,000 voters in Exeter this year alone, I would not have trebled my majority. So let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. And finally, can we please, as a movement, stop treating people who vote for other parties as if there's something wrong with them? The way... If we want them to vote for us, we have to be nice about them and nice to them. And we have to be welcoming. We have to offer an open, inclusive and pluralistic politics, not a tribal one that makes us think that we're always right and they're always wrong.
Thank you. Caroline.
I totally agree with Ben on that. I have to say, like Ben, I almost trebled my majority in this election and made sure that UKIP were kept in third place. And that was a mixture of the doorstep work, not just asking people how they're voting, but over years doing community surveys and other works. But also, it's when you get it sort of the payback from the things you've done as an MP or as a councillor, where someone says, you helped me out with this, or you helped us get 20 miles an hour outside our schools, and the Labour Party was there working with the community as well. So we need to think about that. But I would say, as someone who's been in the party, we're very good at having big consultations. Remember refounding Labour? I mean, there's a book on a shelf somewhere. Have we ever really looked at what the outcomes of that have been across our party? And the truth is, every constituency party, pretty much, there's usually about half a dozen people or so who are the gatekeepers, they're the volunteers who can help make it happen. And we've got to make sure that we recognise that there are some parties with hundreds and hundreds of members and a lot of resources. There are other parties that haven't got that. There are some parties with MPs, or they're running councils, or somewhere they're not doing that as well. And we've got to make sure that our party can make sure everyone can be part of the Labour family, be supported by staff who are trained regionally and nationally to help everyone make progress and feel part of it, rather than sometimes feeling completely under the cosh with yet another campaign mission from someone in the shadow cabinet saying you must do this by last week.
Thank you. And the next question, if you're still with us, here's a name to conjure with, Jim Callaghan. Are you here, Jim Callaghan from Stevenage? I'm getting a kind of Ouija board feeling here. The other Jim Callaghan, as we refer to him, may have already had to leave, because I know some people have, so I will read out his question. There's no ignoring the influence of the media in shaping public opinion. What, if anything, will you do to win over the right-wing press? And that one first to Stella. And that one first to Stella.
Is it me or is it?
No, it's you.
Okay, sorry. Look, the way in which people talk and think about politics is changing. And actually, one of the things that really challenges a lot of us is that conversation isn't happening with us. You are our best defence against the things that Richard Littlejohn will say, because you are there with people to be able to counter what they say. So actually, one of the things is, how do we empower our membership to feel confident to speak up for the values and the issues and the causes that they care about? The right-wing press are not an immovable object. We can change the nature of the debate in this country, but we have to be confident about our values and confident about taking them on. We also have to recognise where those conversations are taking place. And it's as much about what we do online as offline. It's as much about challenging that idea that politics doesn't make a difference by showing people day in, day out what we do. That's why our local government base, why our local activists are so important. That's why we've got to stop being a machine and start being a movement. Because too many people think we only turn up at election time when they don't see the work that we're doing in their communities day in, day out. We can't do that alone from Westminster, but with your help, we can change the conversation and change the country.
Thank you, Tom.
Do you know, I've run out of the number of Sun journalists who've rung me up to complain about Rupert Murdoch shopping them to the police. And I try to help them, I really do. And I give references to former News of the World journalists that didn't hack phones and genuinely have helped them. But there is an issue here, because I still think the Leveson reforms need to be enacted. And it's going to be a very difficult journey for the Labour Party, because there are proprietors of newspapers who are implacably opposed to media reform. And if you want someone who's going to be popular with Rupert Murdoch, I don't think I'm your candidate, if I'm being honest. I'm really not. But we do have to have a professional relationship with quality journalists, and I do think we need to give something back to journalism post-Leveson. I would like to strengthen the Freedom of Information Act, which gives journalists the tools to hold public authorities to account in a way that we've never had before. It was a Labour government that delivered that legislation, and by the way, it's under attack from this government.
Thank you. Ben?
Well, I'm afraid we didn't lose the election because of the media, just as we didn't lose the election because of our grand campaign. Anyone who was on the doorstep knows that that is the truth. Of course we need to have good relations with the media, but if we relied on them, Labour would never have won the majorities that we won in the 90s and noughties. It's about having a credible strategy and having a leadership that people can trust and trust them to run the country in a competent way. And yes, we have to have good media relations. Before I was in politics, I actually had a proper job. Well, you may think that. I was a journalist. I did part of my training on the Eastern Daily Press in Norwich, and I worked in local radio, and I was the BBC correspondent in Berlin when the wall came down. So I understand the media. You can't work in politics, in public life, without having good relations with the media. And although I completely agree with what Tom said about the importance of implementing Leveson in full, it strikes me that it doesn't make sense for us to go out of our way to pick unnecessary fights with the media. We need to make the argument. If we make the argument, and if we're credible, we'll win.
Thank you, Caroline.
Someone told me the other day that actually, in terms of the readership of The Sun, something like nearly 30% vote Labour. So we shouldn't always assume that sometimes that people that read these newspapers do it for the political content. It could be just for the racing pages or the sport. And like Ben, I don't believe, we lost because of the media. What we've got to do is try and make it difficult for them to ignore us and what we're saying. And the truth is that, for most people, it's not the print media that they're looking to for their information these days. It is News at 10, it's online, it's other forms of information. I think actually probably the letters pages of my local paper probably get more traction. That was interesting because UKIP had a policy in my area of making sure every single week there were 6 letters in the local paper from someone associated with UKIP, and I'm seeing some nods around the room, so it sounds like it was happening in the Eastern region as well. So we've got to make sure our message is good. We shouldn't be distracted by single issue things that take us away from our core message about what we're about and what we stand for as a party. And if we have a good message to say, if we are connecting with the British public, that makes it hard for any section of the press, including The Guardian, let's be honest about it, who've urged people to vote Liberal in the past. So we just got to make sure our case, well, it's true. We have to make sure our case is solid, that we are out there, we are proving by our endeavours together that we are different from the other parties and we've got something that connects to people. Then we can get the papers to report on us in a fair way.
Thank you. And Angela.
Well, I think journalism, like politics, is an honourable craft. And so I agree with Ben about that. And I think we should say so. There is great journalism and there is horrible tabloid propaganda sometimes. But I think we worry too much about it. The sales of newspapers are plummeting through the floor at the moment as people get their news from other places, and the media is diversifying. So we always have to be engaged. And I find actually that the media respect us when they think we're going to win. Now they may try to throw us off guard, they may try to put us through the usual Tory propaganda mincer machine, and we shouldn't underestimate the effect that things like Benefit Street and the poverty porn on television have had on people's views of those on benefits. But we have to challenge it, and we have to challenge it in a professional and proper way. And there are people in our party that have done that in the past, and there are certainly people in our party that can do it in the future.
Thank you very much. Next question comes from Sanjay Mehta from Harpenden and Hitchin. Are you with us? Yes, you are. And a microphone is heading your way.
My question is, do you think that a top rate of income tax of 50% would represent the right balance between seeking social justice and fostering aspiration?
And that's to Tom first.
Sanjay, let me be the first person to duck that question on this panel. And I'll tell you why.
Not breath in your chair.
I'll tell you why. The most important job after leader of the Labour Party is not actually the deputy job. It's the Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer. By the way, I have a hunch it could be a woman that's going to do this job, and I think we've got some very capable women that will be able to do it. And they have to be very disciplined in the way they devise tax policy. So I'm not going to make that up on the panel now. I do think people need to shoulder their fair share of the load. And I think we need to say I still think in the election we were right to say to that small number of global corporations, if you want to trade in this country, you should play by the rules and pay your fair share of taxes. but I'm not going to make up income tax policy before we've got a Shadow Chancellor appointed.
Thank you very much. Ben?
Sanjay, I think probably while we've got the deficit we have, it's the right policy, but I don't think it should be a sign of our virility as socialists, that it should be there forever. If you look at it and compare it with other Western European countries, it's on the high side compared with others. And I think there are many voters in your constituency. I was born, spent my first 4 years in Harpenden, who, if they don't pay that rate, they aspire to. They own property as well. They work in the city. These people, they're not all Tories. You know, some of you here will know these people. They have our values. They want a Labour government. They want responsible businesses. They want to support us, but they don't want us to feel that we somehow don't admire them if they get on and do well. And I think we have to do both of those things. I would much rather that we didn't tax income as much, but we taxed untaxed property, the corporations, land. These are the things that are really causing the inequality in our society, not people who work hard, get on and do well for themselves.
Thank you very much. Caroline?
I think in the last Parliament, actually, our decision to attack the government over cutting the top rate was the right thing to do, because it was about sharing, you know, the situation with the deficit and, you know, trying to balance the books. But I think, you know, looking to the next election, I don't think any of us can clearly put out today what the outcome should be for that in terms of taxation. What I think we should be looking at, for example, is that we have a really complicated tax system. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of tax allowances that businesses of various forms can take advantage of. I'd like to strip that away and have a look at what tax allowances are really important to help jobs and opportunities for young people, for businesses to grow, and make it a lot simpler. But I do think, you know, part of my DNA is that Labour should be the value for money party, because we seek to represent people who haven't got the assets that Ben has talked about. They're people who are doing pay-as-you-go in terms of their salaries. And we need to be smart about how we spend money. We should be looking at every penny and saying every penny counts. But I think importantly, for those people in the middle, we should be thinking about going into the next election, making sure we're not going to increase their taxes.
Thank you. Angela?
Well, tax rates all have their own contexts, and I agree with Ben that at the moment when we have a deficit to pay off, that justifies those that can bear a greater share of the burden doing so, but not necessarily forever. We have to have a decent public realm. We need to have huge investment in our infrastructure, in our schools, in our hospitals, so that we can have a society where people can have access to proper services. And we have to get the tax to pay for that. We've got to look though at where the thresholds are, because thresholds have been drifting down, and more people who are on quite modestly paid are being dragged into higher taxes. So we always have to look to see how all of that is going. But I have to say, I think we should be far more moralistic about those who benefit from doing business in this country, existing in this country, actually paying their fair share of tax. And it should be a matter of shame if people avoid tax, rather than a matter of quiet congratulation.
Thank you. Stella?
Sanjay, let me say three things. First and foremost, I think with any tax rate, actually what we should do is judge it on two criteria. How much does it raise and who's affected? Andrew is right to talk about people being dragged into different rates of tax, and that being something that we should be aware of. Secondly, look, I came to 8 out of the 13 target seats in this area and talked to people on the doorstep across this region. Nobody mentioned tax rates, but they did mention their worries about the future and whether they could afford things. And that wasn't just about whether they could make it to the end of the month. It was about whether their kids could get on the housing ladder, whether they could pay for social care, what they might want to do if their kids wanted to go to university. We should always be very, very mindful about the money that people have in their pockets. I represent a community with a high level of personal debt in it, and in fact we are now a country which has one of the highest levels of personal debt around the world. That makes a massive difference to our economy, and it makes a massive difference to the choices that people can make. And too many people in this country aren't able to make the choices they want to make about the kind of future they want to have for their families because of that. So we should always be very mindful about the money that people have, because it's not just about the day-to-day, it is about the long-term too, and it is about social justice.
Thank you very much. And looking at the time, this is going to have to be our final question, I think. But James Valentine, are you here? Are you here? And if so, make yourself known. Nope, possibly not. Okay, in that case, James Valentine's question was, hardly a month goes by without news of yet more unethical behaviour from banks. Do you agree that the banks are still insufficiently regulated, and what would you do to correct this? And that question goes first to Ben.
Yes, I do agree that they're still insufficiently regulated, although I think the Independent Banking Commission did a reasonably good job in the last Parliament about making recommendations. It's just that the current government doesn't seem to show any inclination of implementing it in full, so we have to keep the pressure on that. But I think what we also need to do is accept that effective regulation, not just of the banking system, but of global corporations, can only take place on a supranational level. And that's why retreating from the European Union, retreating from the international community, not having friends on the continent or in America, makes it much, much more difficult for us to make the case for regulation, effective regulation across the board. And I want to see a Labour government that's a positive partner in Europe, that's working with our European partners. They want to do things on banking regulation that the Tory government here is trying to stop them doing. It's an absolute disgrace given what happened. But are those bankers who complain that it's time to stop banker bashing, I'm afraid, yes, we need to celebrate the work that the financial services industry do, but let's not forget who caused the global financial crisis. It wasn't the very small deficit being run by the then Labour government, it was the bankers.
Thank you. Caroline.
Yeah, I think we do need to move on this. I just heard this week, I think it was, is that actually the Tory government has decided not to take part in a European-wide effort to tackle tax avoidance. And whilst that's not strictly about banking, I think it goes to something what Ben was saying about there are some things bigger than one country where we can actually achieve a lot by working with others, because finance is global, as we all know. I do think that we should continue to look at how we better separate what I call the day-to-day banking that probably most of us deal with. You know, whether you're just a saver or you're just paying your salary or you're a local business, still it's the case we're not getting the services we need in our communities. I've just had one of the banks in one of my many villages shut down, HSBC, just before the start of this election. All the businesses in that place, Tick Hill, are saying, that was our bank, that is where we went, where's the personal contact? So I think the difference between the big investment side of the banks and the, if you like, the homegrown banks in our communities, that's a policy we should address again, because I still think there's something there. Also, I think regional investment banking too, to help businesses grow throughout our country. But yes, the job's not over when it comes to regulation, and we've seen that in the way in which, given a slight bit of space, the bonuses are going up again.
Time, please. Okay, Angela.
Well, I agree with Caroline. Retail banking is almost a utility in a modern economy, but investment banking is a form of gambling. And the mis-selling that went on of PPI, of mortgages, and then the manipulation of Forex and some of the international interest rates is a disgrace. And what has happened is that these traders have been allowed to privatise the massive profits that they've made from this behaviour, and they've actually nationalised the huge debts that have been left as a result. And I think that that is why there is such anger in this country about what happened in the banking crash. So regulation is important. I'm not the only one that thinks that, by the way. Mark Carney keeps saying it in the most apocalyptic terms from the Bank of England. So I think it's really important that we're tough on regulation. We've got to do it internationally, but we can do a lot nationally as well. And I think the Conservatives are far too close to the financial industries, and they won't crack down enough. Only we can make the argument that will clean up our banking system.
Thank you, Stella.
People often want to tell you there's not a difference between Labour and the Conservatives. Ask yourself, would you have seen a Labour Chancellor going to Brussels to fight for bankers' bonuses but being silent on the financial transactions tax? There is a very clear, different alternative way that we can have our financial industry work, not just in Britain, but around the world. Only Labour can speak up for that and the difference that it can make. When I first got elected, people told me it would be impossible to take on the high-cost credit lenders, that was just the way it was. But we as a movement spoke up for a different way of doing finance, for not just tackling legal loan sharks, but also for the credit unions. And I'm a very proud member of the Cooperative Party as well. We can be that alternative. We must demand an alternative financial system. All those people with endowment mortgages who are just waiting until interest rates start to go up, all those people with interest-only mortgages that are coming to an end, there is now a huge personal debt crisis brewing in our country. It's only Labour who understands why reforming our banking system and supporting communities across this country to have a decent access to credit, fair credit, makes a difference to the kind of country we are. And yes, I would tell the bankers to pay their way.
Thank you. And Tom.
the single biggest lie told in the last Parliament was that Labour's investment in schools and hospitals created the banking crisis. And if you ask Labour Party members, and I've been talking to them up and down the country, they will say that we lost the general election in 2010 in the first 6 months because we failed to nail that lie. And I think our response has to be, we need to make sure that that lie is nailed. Thank you for letting me get that in. I think that we need to be a very bold party and say that where markets are failing, we are prepared to regulate. And that is still true in the City of London. In 2008, though, corporation taxes, 25% of them came from the City of London. So we are going to have to work with these people, but we've got to make sure that they adhere to the highest standards that is expected of them. But the real goal is to diversify in our economy, to invest in new sectors in industry, so that we're not reliant on the banking sector and the City of London alone. And I think that will be the challenge for that new Chancellor I was talking about.
Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of the questions. The key candidates each now have 2 minutes to make closing speeches to explain to you why they are the best choice for the position, in their view. And we're going to do that in the order that we sit along the platform. So Stella first. You can use the lectern.
I'm asking you to vote for me to be your next deputy leader for 3 reasons. Firstly, I want us to win. Now, I may not look much like John Prescott, but like him, I love nothing better than beating the Tories. And I'll tell you why that is, because I grew up in this region watching the damage that Margaret Thatcher and John Major were doing to friends and family in the 1980s and 1990s. And I am still angry about it. And we may think the coalition government was bad, but we all know the damage that second-term Tory governments do to Britain. So whatever people want to tell you, there is a very clear difference between Labour and the Conservatives. So we have to win in 2020. But we also know the people who need us to speak up for social justice cannot wait until 2020. We have to be campaigning for change now. So just as I forced George Osborne to change his mind about legal loan sharking, I want us to be the party campaigning for social justice day in, day out, from the grassroots up. We can't let them off the hook for the next 5 years. So we need to find new ways to rally people to our causes and our communities now. And that means changing the way in which we work. But let me be clear, that isn't about junking all the hard work we've done so far. It's not about top-down reform. It is about working with people like you to make Labour's case in a way that works in every community across this country. Because it's not just about bringing new faces in at the top table, it's about new faces supporting Labour too. Because our future as a movement isn't just about a new leader and deputy leadership team, it's about the 250,000 leaders within our country who are our members. It's about the hundreds of thousands of people who are part of our trade union movement. It's about the millions of people who share our values but not our membership card. This is about building a movement, not a machine. I have that passion for social justice. I have the experience of effective campaigning. And above all, I have the confidence in all of us that we can win in 2020. Thank you.
Look, amazing things can happen when people come together to organise. But organisation alone is not enough. We need the right message too. To me, our single sentence mission should be that Labour will build a more entrepreneurial but fairer and kinder country. It will be the leaders' job to set out their vision for the Labour Party in the country, and the deputy's job to help them realise it. I think our new leader's task will be to emulate Attlee, who articulated a fusion of national and individual aspiration, convincing people that paying in to the state brings back high-quality public services and a better life for them and their families. Once our leader has set the course, the deputy's job is to get us into place in one piece, with all sections of the party working together. If the leader's on the bridge, I'll be in that engine room. It starts by understanding why we lost. Yesterday I set up a commission to speak to Labour's lost voters, starting with UKIP voters in Dagenham. It was a very entertaining hour's conversation, I can tell you that. I want to push through a digital revolution in the party, with councillors and MPs more digitally engaged and our local campaigners equipped with the kind of technology that means you're not obliged to use clipboards and paper that disintegrates when it starts to rain. I want a culture change so that our councillors and active members are treated as assets to be cherished rather than resources to be plundered. And I want to prioritise political and campaign training to get us ready for future challenges. I want to significantly diversify the way we engage potential candidates with a bursary scheme that can support those without the financial means to run for elections. In short, I want us to organise to win. Thank you.
Friends, we have a massive mountain to climb. We need a strategy for UKIP, for the Greens and for Scotland. But 4 of the 5 voters we need to win back in England and Wales voted Conservative on May the 7th. It's fantastic to have Clive and Daniel from Norwich and Cambridge with us now in Parliament. But let's be honest, where we were fighting the Tories in this region, in most of those seats and most of the rest of England, we went backwards. I would be a leader who was a trusted, I would be a deputy who... I've never wanted to be leader, and I'll say a bit about that in a minute. I would be a trusted deputy loyal to our leader. I've always been loyal to our leaders, to Tony, Gordon and to Ed, prepared to go out and fight for them at their toughest times, but also to deliver difficult messages to them when I thought they got something wrong, and I'd do that on behalf of you, the members. But I have never wanted to be leader. This is not a career stepping stone for me. I just want to help us win. I believe we can, and I think I can help us do that. I don't bring my own agenda to this job. I could work with any one of the leadership contenders, and in fact I think I bring a certain complementarity to each one of them, whether of gender, of geography or of politics. I operate an open, inclusive and pluralist politics. That's the politics I think the British people like, and it's what we need to do as a party if we're to broaden our appeal. And finally, back in 2005, we held 42 seats in the 3 southern regions outside London. We now hold just 12. I'm the only candidate on either ballot who's won a safe Conservative seat in the southern part of England outside London, and not only held it, but trebled my majority at the last election. That's why I think I'm uniquely well placed to help us win in 2020.
Thank you very much, Caroline.
Well, friends, you may feel you know me, so let me tell you something about myself, why I'm Labour and why I'm standing to be deputy leader. My mother had me as a lone parent at 17. I've never known my real dad. We never owned a home. When my mum married, in our first flat, I shared a bedroom with my sister and my parents. Twice in my teens, I lived away from home. The second time, due to my mum's alcoholism, an illness that would kill her. University was not my destiny. It was an escape. By my mid-20s, I had 2 children under 2 on my own. I know what it's like to need a Labour government. I know what it's like to be on benefits, to worry about money, to need a job and childcare and a secure roof over your head. I joined the Labour Party at 17, never thinking I would be an MP. I have never had a sense of entitlement. I have been in the party over 30 years and a trade unionist too, and even today, I still work to prove myself. As a leader by example, a hands-on constituency MP, a doorstep and community campaigner, a creative policy maker, a Commons performer from the backbenches and the dispatch box, and fighting our corner on Question Time and Newsnight, always putting our party first. Look, our party is not a pressure group. We exist to win elections, to make the world a better place. We do that by getting support from across classes, across backgrounds, across all corners of the UK. And up to 2020, we're going to need to oppose this Tory government while fighting locally on many fronts. Now, we'll only succeed if Labour leads a real community campaign, especially in those seats where we haven't got an MP. A grassroots movement, not a Westminster elite. A deputy leader who understands the party inside out. I do. Someone with the empathy to reach voters and reach beyond our core vote. Someone with experience to support the leader, but speak truth to the leader without an agenda. And with your support, I think I can help us win in 2020. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, and let me tell you why I'm standing to be your deputy leader. I never, ever again want to feel like I did at 10:01 on election night when that shock exit poll came in telling us that we'd lost. I knew at that moment, despite all your hard work and dedication, that we'd let millions of people in our country down, and I never, ever want us to do that again. I joined the Labour Party so that people like my mum and dad would have a better chance in life and couldn't just be written off because they were born poor. And unless we change, and unless we reform our party now, we risk letting down another generation of people like my parents. That's why as deputy leader, I'll change how we campaign so we're better connected to all of our communities. I will change our organisation to get rid of command and control and give members and supporters like you much more of a say. And I will never be afraid to tell our leader if they're getting it wrong. But I won't be doing it on the front page of a newspaper. If you elect me, I promise that you'll always know where I stand. I'm proud to come from a working class family. My upbringing shaped my politics and gave me my fighting spirit. I'm a proud trade unionist, and I will always fight for the voice of workers to be heard louder in our party and in the country. And I'm proud to have fought to get more women, Labour women, into Parliament. I will never stop fighting for equality. David Cameron may have told me to calm down, dear. But I promise you I will never calm down while the Tories are in government. I'm a straight talker, an honest broker. I will hold our party together as we rebuild, and I will be the member's deputy who will always put you first. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to all 5 of our candidates for answering so openly. Thank you very much to the audience for all your questions and for giving up your Saturday. To the elected Conservative, I'm pretty sure I spotted in the audience earlier. I hope you learned something. Membership forms are available on the way out. And if you want to vote, just to remind you, if you want to vote in this contest, if you were here to find out how you wanted to cast your vote, just remember that you need to make sure that either your membership fees are paid up or that you're registered as a supporter by the time ballots go out, which is August the 12th. Voting closes on September the 10th. Results are declared September the 12th at the Special Leadership Conference, and if you wanted to attend that, you can find out how to do so via the website labour.org.uk if you haven't already given up enough of your free time already. Many thanks.